It started with a smell in the water tank. At first, it was subtle, barely noticeable to some of the guests staying at the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. The water that trickled from their faucets carried a strange taste. The pressure seemed weaker than usual, and when they brushed their teeth or took showers, an unpleasant aftertaste lingered. Some guests dismissed it as just another flaw in a budget hotel known for its crumbling reputation. But for others, the sense that something was deeply wrong only grew with each passing day. Complaints trickled down to the front desk. Something was off about the water. Maintenance workers were dispatched to investigate. On a gray February morning, they climbed the metal ladders leading up to the rooftop, a place normally off-limits to guests. Up there sat the hotel's massive water tanks, large, industrial containers that supplied water to the hundreds of rooms below. One of the workers noticed that one of the tank's hatches was not secured properly. With effort, he pried it open and peered inside. What he saw would horrify the world. Floating in the dark, stagnant water was the naked, decomposed body of a young woman. Her clothing drifted nearby, tangled and heavy with the weight of moisture. For a moment, the workers stood frozen, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. Then, as the realization sank in, panic spread through the rooftop. Authorities were called immediately, but the damage had already been done. For weeks, the guests of the Cecil Hotel had been drinking, cooking with, and bathing in water contaminated by death. The woman was soon identified as Elisa Lam, a 21-year-old student from Canada. She had checked into the hotel weeks earlier, traveling alone on what was meant to be a short adventure along the west coast of the United States. The discovery of her body sparked headlines around the world, but it was the mystery of how she ended up there, and why, that would capture global attention, turning her story into one of the most chilling and unsolved cases of the decade. Elisa Lam was no ordinary traveler. Born in Vancouver to immigrants from Hong Kong, she grew up as a quiet, thoughtful young woman. Her friends described her as intelligent and introspective, someone who loved books and wrote candidly about her life online. On her blog, she shared personal struggles with mental health, particularly bipolar disorder, a condition she faced with a mixture of vulnerability and resilience. Her writing revealed the inner world of a young woman trying to make sense of her mind, her identity, and her place in the world. She was open about her struggles but also hopeful, often encouraging others who read her words to hold on and keep moving forward. In late January of 2013, Elisa set out on her solo trip across California. She wanted adventure, independence, and a chance to see more of the world beyond her university life in Canada. She promised her parents she would stay in touch every day. She kept that promise, until February 1st when she suddenly went silent. No calls, no emails, no texts. Concerned, her parents contacted Los Angeles police. A missing persons case was opened, and investigators began retracing her final days. The Cecil Hotel where Elisa had been staying was not an ordinary stop. Opened in 1927, it had once been a glamorous destination for businessmen and tourists. But over the decades, it fell into decay. As downtown Los Angeles struggled with poverty and crime, the Cecil became synonymous with darkness. It was a place where transient residents mixed with vulnerable travelers, where drugs, prostitution, and violence were not uncommon. Its walls had witnessed suicides, overdoses, and murders. Two notorious serial killers, Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, and Jack Unterweger, had even called it home during their reigns of terror. Locals nicknamed it the Suicide Hotel, and ghost stories whispered through the halls. For Elisa Lam, the Cecil was just a budget-friendly stop on her journey. But to the world, the location itself added an aura of dread to the unfolding mystery. Security cameras confirmed that Elisa had checked into the hotel on January 28th. For several days, she explored Los Angeles, visiting bookstores, coffee shops, and meeting other travelers. Witnesses recalled her as cheerful, friendly, though at times her behavior seemed a little unusual. Moments of sudden energy followed by periods of withdrawal. On January 31st, she was seen in the hotel lobby, her behavior reportedly odd enough that staff decided to move her from a shared hostel-style room to a private one. That evening, she appeared one last time, caught on a surveillance camera in one of the hotel's elevators. The footage would soon become infamous. At first, Elisa enters the elevator casually, pressing several buttons as though trying to choose a floor. But the doors do not close. She steps forward and peers out as though checking to see if someone is there. Her movements become quick, anxious. She ducks back into the elevator, pressing herself against the wall, then peeks out again. It looks as if she's hiding, from who or from what no one can say. Then her behavior changes entirely. She steps in and out of the elevator multiple times. She gestures wildly, her hands moving in strange, contorted patterns, almost as if she's conducting an invisible orchestra or speaking in a language of signs no one understands. At one moment, it seems as if she's talking to someone just beyond the camera's view. The most unsettling detail: the elevator doors never close. They remain open far longer than they should, as though malfunctioning, or as though someone is keeping them that way. The video was released by police on February 13th, in hopes the public might provide leads. Instead, it went viral, sparking millions of views and endless speculation. Internet sleuths dissected every frame, analyzing Elisa's gestures, the timing of the doors, even the grainy shadows in the footage. Some believed she was hiding from a pursuer. Others thought she was in the midst of a mental health crisis, hallucinating or disoriented. A darker corner of the internet suggested something paranormal, that Elisa was interacting with an unseen entity. The video became a Rorschach test for fear, each viewer projecting their own interpretation onto her final recorded moments. When her body was discovered in the water tank 6 days later, the world's attention turned from speculation to horror. How could a young woman have ended up in such an inaccessible place? The tanks were difficult to reach, requiring workers to climb ladders and open heavy lids. They were secured, supposedly off-limits to anyone but maintenance staff. For Elisa to end up inside, alone, raised disturbing questions. Was it possible she climbed in herself, in the throes of a manic episode? Or had someone placed her there? The autopsy only deepened the mystery. Toxicology reports found no evidence of drugs or alcohol. The only substances in her system were her prescribed medications for bipolar disorder, though the levels suggested she had not been taking them consistently. That inconsistency, medical experts suggested, could have triggered disorientation or psychosis. Yet there were no signs of physical trauma, no evidence of sexual assault, no bruises or defensive wounds. The coroner's office ruled her death an accidental drowning, with her mental health condition listed as a contributing factor. But that explanation left more questions than answers. How had Elisa reached the rooftop without triggering alarms? How had she lifted the heavy lid of the water tank and entered it alone? Why had the elevator behaved so strangely in the video? Guests reported strange noises and encounters on the night of her disappearance, but none could be substantiated. Even stranger, conspiracy theorists pointed to a bizarre coincidence. At the same time as Elisa's disappearance, Los Angeles was experiencing an outbreak of tuberculosis. The test for the disease was known as the Lam Elisa. To many, this was either a grim joke of fate or evidence of a hidden connection.